Hey guys, this is Melissa with Love Card Life, and I am so excited today. As you can see, I have a completely new setup. Yes, I finally finished unpacking and found space in my house to set up a little office area. Thanks to my amazing husband, I am experimenting with new lighting, new sound, pretty much new everything today. So don't be afraid to critique me and let me know if anything needs to be adjusted. I have no clue what I am doing, you guys. As with everything on YouTube has been, this is a huge learning curve for me. So one other thing I want to mention is, I don't know if you guys can see, sometimes this bothers people. I have dirt under my fingernails, and I am a gardener, you guys, so it's probably going to be that way all summer, and there's nothing I can do about it. Today, I'm going to be answering a question that I received from my friend Thaddeus. Are you a Unitarian Universalist or a Trinitarian Universalist? And this is a question I get quite often, where people will ask me, what are your views on the Trinity? I have so many different viewpoints with you guys who come and comment on my videos. Maybe none of you will agree with what I'm going to say today, and that is fine. I am not afraid of differing opinions and discussions. Feel free to disagree with me in the comments. Am I a Unitarian Universalist or a Trinitarian Universalist? The answer is, I am neither. Trinitarians believe that God is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. One God and three persons, and that God is separate and distinct from his creation. Unitarians believe that God is one, that Jesus is not God, but was just a man. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the Holy Spirit is just another reference to God the Father. Please correct me, my Unitarian friends, if I am wrong on that. Unitarians also believe that God is separate and distinct from his creation. Where I differ with both camps here is that I do not believe God is separate and distinct from his creation. We as God's creation are an expression of God. We originated or emanated from God. That is what I believe. And as an expression of God, we are not God in his fullness, but we are an aspect of God. A good way of explaining this would be like the sun. So the sun shines out light, but nobody would look at a ray of light and say, oh, that is the sun. No, it's an expression of the sun. It's a creation of the sun. It's an emanation of the sun. But it, in and of itself, is not the sun. So God is like the sun, and we are like the light. We originate with God, but we are not God. We have our source in God, and everything that we are comes from what God is, if that makes sense. Where am I getting this from? Well, three places: science, near-death experiences, and the teachings of Jesus. And I was originally going to try to fit all of this into one video, but it's just not going to happen, you guys. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do science and near-death experiences in this video, and then I'm going to do a separate video on the teachings of Jesus. And the reason why I have Jesus last is because obviously to me what Jesus says is the most important. But also, I think that all three of these sources build on each other and sort of crescendo with the teachings of Jesus. So I want to close out with what Jesus said. First, science. Everything that I'm going to say, I will link sources in the descriptions for you guys to check out. The holographic principle of quantum physics says that a powerful consciousness flows through the universe. Just like every part of a hologram contains the image of the whole, so every atom in the universe, whether it's found in a drop of water, plasma from a distant star, or a human cell, contains the image of the universe. Or, as religion would put it, the image of God. We are all made of the same stuff, and this stuff, whatever it is aware, unifying, and transcendent. Scientists, philosophers, and religious thinkers alike have tried to put a name to this unifying principle. Science has called it the quantum mind, or the sea of energy. Eastern religion has called it the life force, or universal consciousness. Christians have called it the Holy Spirit. People from various religions and cultures throughout time have sensed what science is now beginning to uncover, that there is a greater presence and consciousness flowing throughout the universe. This consciousness connects us intimately and transcends physical reality in ways that we are only beginning to understand. An example of this transcendence can be found in the principle of quantum entanglement. Entanglement is a scientific term for what happens when two particles become so closely intertwined that they share an existence. It's as if they are no longer two particles, but as if they have become the same particle. When quantum entanglement occurs, space and time have no effect on the particles anymore. They can be across the universe from each other or even at different points in time. And what happens to one particle will affect what happens to the other particle. This phenomenon, known as non-locality, has been observed time and time again in photons in a lab and has also been observed in human reactions to each other from across distances. It acknowledges that matter and energy, no matter how far apart, are connected by some underlying intelligence. David Bohm, one of the most significant theoretical physicists of the 20th century, called this intelligence a conscious atomic seed. And he said, extending out from the subatomic reality, all creation may be said to be conscious. Bohm's observation gives rise to the idea that our individual consciousness sprang out of a greater underlying consciousness. A consciousness that encompasses the entire universe. A consciousness out of which the entire universe came. This implies a oneness and interconnectedness between all created things, and especially between all conscious beings. Isaac Bentov, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, but he was a scientist and researcher in the field of consciousness. He said that if our physical world is like ice, then our consciousness and everything that makes it up, so our thoughts, emotions, attitudes, intentions, is like steam, made of the same basic stuff. Energy vibrating at different rates, yet less restricted by physical boundaries. Our consciousness, or what we are, our awareness, is non-local, not restricted by time or space. Now, replace the word consciousness, the word used by science to describe who we are, what we are, our awareness, and replace it with the word spirit, the word used by religion to describe who we are or our awareness. And what we have is individual spirits, individual beings, conscious beings, arising out of a great spirit, the breath or spirit of God, creating and flowing through all of his creation. The existence of God encompassing all that is. All of us came from God, a part of God, cannot be separated from God, more closely and intimately connected to God and each other than religion has ever told us. This is the reality that is now being uncovered by science. That matter, three-dimensional reality, that which appears to keep us separate from each other, is actually an illusion. What scientists have found when they have studied the behavior of subatomic particles is that the particles themselves do not exist. Divide the atom into its smallest possible parts, quarks and electrons, and what you find is that they are not actually there, at least not in the sense that we thought they were. We used to think that an atom was 99.99% empty space, and that the remaining 0.01% or whatever it was made up of particles of electrons, protons, and neutrons. But now we know that the entire atom is made up of energy. So the 99.99% that we thought was empty space is actually potential energy. It is an energy field. And the 0.01% that we thought were particles are actually miniature vortices of energy. It's all energy. There is no particle there. The electrons, the quarks, the preons, when they try to break them down, they're not there. They're energy vortices. And they actually have a really hard time pinning down where they're at. They're constantly changing their position based on the observation of the scientists. The observer of reality, or consciousness, has an effect on what we perceive to be physical matter. So what's my point here? We are all energy. And what does energy do? It flows, it connects, it intermingles. It can't be separated. Like water from creeks and streams and rivers all flow and intermingle together. A water molecule from a backyard brook cannot be separated from a water molecule in a mountain creek. It all eventually flows together and ends up in the sea, evaporates and falls again as rain. And like the water droplets, we flow and merge and interconnect and intermingle with each other. We are one with each other, with the universe, and with God from which we came in ways that we can only begin to imagine right now. And of all the names that has been put to this oneness, consciousness, universal energy, the subatomic sea, the great mind, I think there is one word that best sums up what all of this is, this energy or consciousness that we all came from that connects us all, and what we are. And the word that I think best sums it up is divine love. And I'm going to tell you why, and this brings me to my next point. We are going to look at several near-death experience accounts here, which are going to show why, again, I believe that God is not separate and distinct from his creation, that God is within us and we are within God in ways that we have not understood within the bounds of religion. The main message of near-death experiences is that God is love, that we are love, that everything is about love, and that the point of life here on earth is to learn to love. I'm not going to go into this the backstory on how these people ended up dying and then being brought back. Otherwise, it's going to make this video like an hour long. I will link all of their stories below so you can check that out if you want to. The first person I'm going to quote from is Pam Reynold. So when she died, she found herself in the presence of God, who appeared to her as a brilliant white light, and there were also many beings of light there to greet her, some of which she recognized, some of which she didn't. But what she noticed is that they were all made of the same light that God is. And this is completely normal for near-death experiences. This is something that you hear over and over. There were many people I recognized and many I didn't. A sea of people. They were light. They themselves were light. Their clothing was light. Light was emanating from them. At one point I asked what the nature of the light was, and I asked if the light was God. And I was told, no, the light is not God. It's what happens when God respirates or breathes. And at that time, at that exact moment, I thought, wow, I'm standing in the breath of God. But the realization that she had was that not only was she standing in the breath of God, but she was the breath of God, because she was the same light that everybody and everything else was, and the same light that God was made up of. So light in near-death experiences is another way of describing this consciousness that science is talking about, or the spirit that religion talks about. I mean, it's all different ways of describing the same thing. Number 2, Reinee Pasarow's story. So Reinee Pasarow had an experience where she left her body and then ended up traveling up above the earth into the universe, where ultimately she reconnected with God, her creator. I could see and feel and beat with the same heart as every individual that was living on this planet, as every amoeba that was swimming in the ocean. I could feel and hear the notes of this wonderful, grand, universal song that enveloped the whole earth, and I saw that we as individuals, as human beings, as human spirits existing in bodies, have a unique creative capacity on this plane of existence, and what makes us creative and very powerful is really the tone of our hearts. Not what we do, not what we own, not what we know, but really the tone of our hearts permeates the stuff of all physical existence. I felt that nothing exists without a purpose, or without a note to sing in this grand single universal symphony, and I began to sing my note. I began to sing, I am, and that's the only words I can use, but it wasn't I am in the sense of self. It was an I am one and of you. I love you. I am connected to all of you and in harmony with all of you. And this was an expression of love and an expression of the divinity of all of creation. From that point, I was aware that there was a light that was permeating and shining from the hearts of people, from individuals, and that permeated the whole planet. And I began to move towards that light. So what she realized is that the light of God, which she was moving towards, was actually permeating all of creation, and that it was within the hearts of every individual. And that this light is not only light, but it is the tone of our hearts or our spirits, and it is creative. I moved into what appeared to be a sea of light. It was as if every atom or molecule had been electrified with love, with creative and very powerful love. We think of love as being something not powerful, but this love, I realized, was the greatest force of all things. And it was as if every atom were an individual and were singing and was welcoming me and was full of love. So what she's describing here is exactly the same thing that the physicists that I quoted have been describing. In fact, there's another physicist I did not think to look up for this video, but he makes a statement about how the entire universe is a giant symphony, and scientists are trying to figure out the notes. Well, near-death experiencers, I believe, can fill in some of those puzzle pieces for us, because what they're telling us is the notes, the music is love. The energy or the consciousness that science is talking about, or that New Age talks about, is not just an impersonal energy field. It is a being. It is personal, it is aware, it is conscious, and it is love. Because God is love. This light that she experienced and that they all experience, and this consciousness, this tone of the heart, this spirit, what it is it is love. And love is the most powerful force of the universe. It is the unifying force that binds us all together, that makes us all up, that is pulling us all back to our Creator. Number 3, Jeff Olson. Jeff Olson had a couple of experiences, and the first one was after a car accident when his body was still in the hospital and he was still conscious and aware outside of his body, and he was observing the doctors and the nurses and the other patients in the hospital. And he says, everyone I saw, I knew them absolutely perfectly. I knew everything about them. I knew their love, their hate, their joy, their pain. I knew their choices, their decisions. It was as if I was them and they were me. Now, I'd grown up in a Christian home. I actually had a Bible verse come up in this whole episode, which was the classic verse that said, "Inasmuch as you've done it unto the least of them, you've done it unto me," which I used to think was a nice verse about being kind to people. What I didn't realize was the connection. Wow, they are me. I am them. And I was experiencing that, looking at every soul and having this overwhelming, unconditional love for them. At a later date, he had an experience in which he went to what he describes as heaven, and he was allowed to hold his infant deceased son. And while he was holding his deceased son in his arms, he felt the presence of his Creator come up behind him. Now, this was so overwhelming, I didn't even dare turn around. What I felt was so cosmic and so powerful and so profound and so wise, and yet also so absolutely personal. Absolute unconditional love just poured through me, and I felt almost as if my son became part of me and I became part of God, and then we all became part of everything there is. I was experiencing I am that I am. The day he returned home from the hospital, he was being pushed in a wheelchair, and his older living son came out of the house to meet him and came and sat on his lap in the wheelchair. And he says, as I sat there in that wheelchair holding my living son in this realm, it was no less profound than holding my deceased son in that realm. All of a sudden, the whole veil, if you will, just vanished, and I realized heaven is right here. There's nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. There's nothing to become. It's simply to be here now and to be open to the miracles and to the love. Jeff Olson had this incredible experience of oneness with God and all of creation. And then when he came back to this world, his realization was, I'm just as one with God and with everybody else here as I was there. the veil vanish. The veil is the illusion that we are separate from God, that we are separate from each other, that we are our own individual entity, disconnected from everybody else. This is what leads to sin. All sin flows from the belief that we are separate, that we are on our own. And his statement here, heaven is right here, there's nowhere to go. It's simply to be here now and to be open to the love and the miracles is so reminiscent of Jesus' statement, the kingdom of heaven is here. You can't look at it and say, here it is, or it's over there, because the kingdom of heaven is within you. It's something that you have to awaken to. And as the Course in Miracles says, heaven is not a place, it is an awareness of perfect oneness. Number 4, Linda Stewart. So Linda Stewart was met by Jesus Christ in her near-death experience, and Jesus Christ took her to meet her Creator. Ascending even farther, I lifted my eyes to see a great light in the vast distance. With Christ as my guide, I rapidly approached the light. Ecstasy filled my soul as I looked at the radiance, many-fold brighter than a sun. The light was everywhere and everything, the brightest I had ever seen, and dazzling beyond description. Brilliant enough to blind or burn, yet I was not harmed. The light moved over and through me, washing every hidden place of my heart, removing all hurt and fear, transforming my very being into a song of joy. I was filled with complete knowing. The light was love, and love was God. Waves of consummate love which emanated from the light obliterated every burden I carried and every thought that kept me from knowing God. I was made aware of my purity. With new clarity, I realized I had been walking through life ghost-like, wrapped in a shroud of fear, huddled against illusions. There was no limit to the outpouring as I came to the rapturous awareness of the infinite nature of God's love. There was no place that God did not exist, and I was within God. I am an inescapable part of the light. The truth of who I am, indeed, who we all are, is perfect love as a creation of God. All of God's creation is one creation, and I am one with creation. God and I are one, creator and created. I think that speaks for itself. I don't think there's really anything I can do to add to that. Number 5, Nancy Reinholds. Nancy was an atheist, and she expected that when she died, she would just drift into non-being. She says, instead of drifting off into kind of a gray nothingness, I woke up in a really amazing landscape that was just shimmering with energy and a really profound sense of peace and unbelievable love. It was incredible. It was the most amazing sense of peace and love I think I've ever felt. You can't feel that here on earth. It just doesn't happen here. But I felt completely loved for who I was, even though I got the sense that whoever was the consciousness behind it all. So again, it's not an impersonal energy force we're talking about. It's a someone. Wasn't necessarily happy with some of the choices that I'd made in my life. But I was still completely loved without any hesitation, even though I'd been an atheist, even though I professed to non-belief. When asked what her most important takeaway from her experience was, she says, that love that we talked about, that divine love, is here with us, even though we might not be able to sense it. That divine love is here through us, all through us. But it's what I learned in heaven, that divine love was somehow forming the scaffolding or the structure of that place. But it's here too. That pervasive love is forming a structure here too. And we can learn to tap into that and to use it and to explore it. It's here, not somewhere else. The kingdom of heaven is here. There's nowhere to go. Heaven is here because it's all love. If you listen to some doctors now talk about the energy fields and the energy force that makes up the body, what they will say is that we here in the physical world, our bodies are made up of densely packed packets of light energy. So we are literally made of light, and this light is the energy and the consciousness that quantum physics talks about, and the love that near-death experiencers talk about. It's all the same thing. We're all made up of it. So this world is literally, Nancy is saying, the physical structure that this world is made up of is divine love. This computer is physically made of love. This desk is made of love. I mean, I am made of love. You are made of love. Everything is made of love. We are all made of divine love because God is love and we all came from God. Yvonne Kaysen says of her near-death experience, I was experiencing that the higher power was more like a force field of infinite intelligence and infinite love that's underlying and permeating all of creation, all of the universe. That we are like droplets in this ocean of love that is the higher power. So notice again how she uses the word force field because she's trying to describe the all-encompassing nature and the fact that this is underlying everything. But then she says it's a force field of infinite intelligence and infinite love, meaning it's very personal. And my last quote for you is from Thomas Howell, who says of his experience of leaving the physical realm, with each step there was just such a vast opening and such a vast peace and joy and a bliss. And when we got to the end, it was just the sense of being immersed in a field of infinite love. There was the sense that love, awareness, clarity, bliss, joy, they were all just different words that were pointing to the same fundamental layer of being. So that fundamental layer of being that is making up everything, that is divine love. And it is what all of us came from and what we are all made of. Now, keep in mind, I just quoted 7 stories to you. But there are millions of people who have had near-death experiences, and a quick Google search will provide many more stories of people saying the exact same thing. I just wanted to share a few of my personal favorites with you guys. You know, I know there's a lot of you who disagree with near-death experiences and anything that has a new age sound to it. I really just wanted to explain to you guys where I'm coming from. Feel free to disagree with me in the comments as always, guys. Let's get a discussion going on this topic. Be loved, be happy, be at peace, and thank you for watching.